So we were thinking about a topic. So the last time we talked about both of us like being fairly creative, and then we had this idea of, or this dilemma of like both of us want to do creative stuff, and we to a degree do it, but then people who tend to be creative have these strong urges to do something maybe professionally or maybe do a project, but it's really hard to pull it all the way through. I believe that if you want to do, for example, have a creative career, it's more of a matter of consistency and work and getting better than providing value that way. But the motivation part, like the pulling through, seems like the creative people also have this emotional wall or something that's holding them back. They say, I want to be a musician.
Yeah.
And then you start working on something, and at some point you just stop. And then you kind of, I don't know if it's discouragement or what, but this seems to happen more than often with a lot of creative people. That's the topic. And we're going to try and figure out why might that happen, what's something we could do about it, and so forth.
I think it's very individual why someone would mentally block themselves from, not doing what they want to do. And I think it has to do with, who you are as a person. I think it has to do with, in what stage in life you are at. I do think these are like two really important factors or subjects that you can discuss that actually affects the way you think and the way you see and the reason to why you are not acting in the way you want to be.
I really wonder when people, for example, when there's something they want to do. I think we might want to be more specific, where one of my dreams or one of the things that I kind of want to do at one point in my life is to make a movie. And and I'm trying to think what would go, so what would be the things that would keep me back from that? Well, first of all, there's the lack of time. It's not my priority necessarily, or like I don't prioritize it enough where I have to, make money to survive, to live and stuff like that. And making a movie takes a lot of time. So I could be doing it slowly and then just implementing it. But then I think also another reason would be that I just don't believe it's going to be very good. So I get discouraged every time I start doing it. For example, I might be writing a script, and as soon as I hit a mental block or a creative block, I just think to myself, it's not going to work. And then I get discouraged and I stop until I feel that urge to do it again because I'm so excited about that. Yeah. And or then I just don't have the resources like a camera or the sufficient things. Let's say, I mean, you can do a lot of things with nowadays, just a phone nowadays, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So there's several reasons, but obviously it's always individual in different situations. But I think we want to tackle a bit more of the motivational challenge, like when you get discouraged, or what's behind that? For example, you talked about your music before. You want to do music, but why haven't you really aspired to that?
I can feel myself, like I can relate to what you're saying when you're being discouraged, and whenever you hit this mental block, it just like, how do you say it? Like, it stops you from being as creative as you actually are.
The mental block?
Yeah, the mental block. It just, the mental block just stops you from actually working. And basically what you have to do, I feel like, is just surpass this sort of mental block or something. Yeah.
Do you want to define the mental block a bit more? Because I feel like it could be so vague. Like when I think of, for example, like there's a term called the writer's block, where you're just trying to come up with ideas, but you can't. But you could have a mental block of like, or you're so distracted by other things. I think that could be a block as well. But what do you mean exactly?
What I mean is probably Actually, I could probably describe it as a creative mental block, because at one point you're really creative and everything goes smooth, but at another point, suddenly, whatever you write or come up with is just not good enough. And the funny thing is that when that happens to me, it's probably because I realize that I'm thinking too much of how other people would see this. So when I write something, when you write a story or something good, you really think of how someone else is gonna read this and how they would, see it. And in the end, it just stops me from actually just finishing it.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking of how someone else would see this. That's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing when I write a song or when I sing. Sometimes what stops me from singing is like, okay, what could stop me from singing is completely different. First of all, if I'm home and there's an audience, like not obviously a real audience, but just people around the house, it kind of makes me not go full out on singing, and it kind of stops me sometimes from just evolving, because I have this feeling that someone is always listening to me, and
Mm.
someone can hear everything I do and my mistakes,
Mm.
and I kind of feel like we are really afraid of showing our mistakes and showing that we are actually human, and like we're not perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the example of, I don't know if you've ever recorded yourself talk or sing, and in your head wow.
At least that was one
Yeah.
full conversation.
So, like in our heads, we may sound really good. I think this comes when, like, at least when you're singing, like you feel like you can, you hear yourself and you sound fairly like, wow, I actually sound good. And then you record yourself and you realize, this is crap. Like it's horrible.
Yeah, it
and,
is.
and then you realize like the shame just like builds, and then you realize, oh, that's what everyone else hears, and it's horrible. Or whenever when you make something more creative, it's that you when you see the faultiness of what you do, it's easy to get discouraged.
That's what I mean.
But what's the difference between then the people who do get discouraged and those creatives who don't?
Uh,
Or maybe everybody does, but what's the difference between those who stop and those who don't? PJ, tell us.
Or can you repeat the question?
has he even been listening? No.
He's in another world.
I started to think something else. I started actually.
What did you think about?
I was started thinking about that, whole discussion about, when you're creating something that comes from yourself and you get discouraged, when you hear yourself being really bad or sucky or really crappy. But it's really understandable because at the end of the day, when you do something, is it a song or is it a piece of writing or whatever it is, it's an extension of yourself. And you're putting yourself out there in a way that when you have created something, it tells something about you. And at the same time, when people come up to you and say that piece of creativity that you have put out there, it's total crap.
It's a piece of crap.
It's piece of exactly, literally, it's piece of crap. And at the same time, it's not only about that piece of art that you have just made. It's also about you because many people take it really personally. I think that's for many people. It may be a barrier for you to really go out there and put yourself out there because not many people are willing to take those hits that all that or that scrutiny that comes when you're like doing something really creative. And I think that's one of the, I guess to me as well, I think it's one of the things that hinders people. And when they get more comfortable being in the limelight, so to speak, they know how to handle the pressure. They might notice that one person, if he says or she says that that's total crap, that might be only one person's opinion. But then there is, you don't know what the rest of the people are thinking, and you might not realize that you can improve, and you might find your thing that actually is, it's just going to click at some point. because we all need practice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That also, I think, answers the question that I was posing. If like, what's the difference between the people who, get discouraged and stop, and those who might get discouraged but still continue? Where I feel like it's true. Whenever you put out something creative, it comes from a deeper place. Typically, not always, but it is an extension of yourself. It's something you've created. All of us have those experiences where you, as a kid, you drew something and you go and show it to your parents. Like, look at this, and you're really just craving for praise, or like you just want to be acknowledged by something. And I think that still we bring it to our adulthood, and when we do something creative, we show things to the world, but at the same time we expose a part of ourselves. And who likes to be judged? No one, really.
No one.
But then you can really get good at not caring too much, that you're okay being ridiculed, because at least you know where you are, and you know that, okay, this is something I enjoy, I'm actually proud of this. It's nice if people can appreciate this, but if you don't, I don't care.
I totally agree.
No.
I think that is one of the major issues to why we are experiencing this mental barrier
Yeah.
we were talking about.
So is it really more about practicing to expose yourself and to be more resilient towards moments that, or situations that might spark up feelings of shame or vulnerability, and just, yeah, I suppose it is about resilience and like being okay with yourself. It's like, okay, this is what I'm giving out, and I'm totally fine with it. If you don't, hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, like accepting that this is me and I work with me, and no one else, has anything to say about me except for me. You should always accept who you are, and that you can always improve and become a better person and become like better at whatever you're doing, and whatever someone else feels or thinks about what you have created or shared. It shouldn't hurt you, because everyone has their different thoughts, and like it can even be someone you love, like a close family member. They can just express their opinion about what masterpiece you have created, or yeah, and it shouldn't, like, we should be a lot more. We should be better at taking that their thoughts and not really taking it to our hearts, but more like, okay, that's another way to actually improve my way of working or my creativity.
Yeah, it could be. And I mentioned before that, you just don't care. But at the same time, I might want to change that, where like sometimes it is good that you feel something, that, if someone criticizes your work, it just says like, that's crap. Of course, you want to think if what they're saying actually has any substance to it. Are they, when they give feedback, is there actual value in what they're saying? Because I feel like sometimes people, especially when it comes to like creative stuff or art, sometimes it's so based on opinion that it doesn't really matter what someone says. If you like it, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
But definitely when it comes to, if you want to create professional value somehow, it has to click with either a niche of people, which can be a lot of people, or with the majority of people. But if it clicks with no one, then it might be difficult professionally to, do something with it, unless you just do it for yourself, where no one else's opinion matters at that point.
Exactly.
But what I was saying is that with resilience, I think being resilient isn't about not caring. It's about caring, but being able to carry that feeling of hurt and being okay. You can still function after that, and you don't get discouraged by that criticism. And I like what you said. Like, it's all about improvement. Someone said once that people who actually do the difference between like professionals and like those people who like then stop doing is that those who stop are really looking for the validation here and now. Am I good? Am I good enough now? Instead of being more passionate about the improvement itself. Where I think a lot of, like you said, a lot of creative people just want to validate themselves. I made this, am I good now? rather than like I made this, wow, how can I make this better? And just the intrinsic satisfaction of actually just making it and creating something, rather than I'm exposing my part of myself and I want to be accepted. What do you think?
I totally agree with you. I can actually relate to being one of the being the one person, you know, just doing something and then like, am I good now? Like, will you accept me? Or like searching for that, you know, sort of confirmation. And it's weird to say, but attention. I'm like seeking. I don't know. Like it feels like I was seeking some sort of attention, but at the same time confirmation as like, hey, look at me. Actually, I can actually do something more than actually doing it for the real purpose. Like, I really enjoy and I love to do this, and I'm being passionate about it. Maybe that's why, you know, I feel sometimes that I'm not really doing it because, like, maybe that's why I'm getting this mental block because I'm not doing it for the right purpose. You know, I'm doing it to be accepted, and I'm doing things because I feel like I need the attention because I don't get it from somewhere else.
sources,
Yeah, other
yeah.
sources
Yeah,
perhaps. Yeah,
yeah.
maybe that's why. And I mean, it's not. I don't think it's wrong to do that, but like,
It's good to realize
yeah,
at
it's good
least.
to realize it. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that just means you have to work on the other sources and trying to get that kind of confirmation from somewhere else, from elsewhere. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
No, I actually like that. Let's hear what PJ has to say.
I think what we're talking about here, I think there's a really interesting juxtaposition as well, that when we need to try to find to be, we need to cater to the masses when you're trying to hit, when you're trying to hit it off with the masses, you want to have your songs or your things, you know, take off. I think it's really interesting that at the same time you have to please the crowds, but at the same time you have to be unique. So I think there's a little bit of like paradoxality as well in there as well. But as we think about it, you know, we at the same time you need to be brave. You need to be brave to be yourself, because when we think about the famous or the people who are, I guess, in the world standards, successful artists or people playing in the creative fields, and those people, we know them by themselves. You know, you cannot really name anyone who is like just mundane in a way, that he's average. Most of those people in their respective fields are like best, or they're known for their style. Like for example, if you think about writers, we usually hear people say like, I like his style of writing, or with artists we hear people say that he has a really unique voice, or she is really talented in this particular field, and that's what, you know, draws crowds to them as well. And I think it's really interesting that at the same time, when you're beginning, you're kind of like trying to serve everyone, but I think that's just the way to find the people that you really click with and that you can cater to. And when you start getting that recognition and maybe that validation as well, that of course you need when you're growing your creative business. At the same time, it's, I don't know what's the right way to go about it, to at the same time being unique and trying to harness that, or I guess like grow into, you know, to I guess, how do you say, you know, a proper functioning creative businessman in a way, you know, if it makes any sense, you know, I don't know.
I think does make sense. We all need to find the audience who we're trying to cater to, or who clicks with our style. Let's say if you're definitely going for the creative thing, but you have to get there first by being consistent in creating. But I think the consistency takes the being able to tolerate the obstacles, or like the mental challenges that come with trying to create consistently, which is just like, I feel like so often we hear criticism from others, but it's so much of the criticism is like just in our heads, where it's we come up with the reasons why this is a crappy song or why this is a crappy piece of video or art in general, and then getting through that. And I don't know if you've noticed, like at least when I do create something, I get so blind to realizing is it good or not. So then it's totally whatever my head says kind of gets like, especially if it's negative, it's easy to like not be able to see, is this actually a good piece of work or is it something else? Because then again, like I remember I made an animation and I was I felt like that this was such a mediocre piece of work. And then when it was shown to a crowd of people who it was directed to, everyone was laughing like crazy. And I was like, wow, I just didn't realize that it was like, this succeeded so much better than I ever thought. But in my head, it was a total mediocre piece of work. It's difficult.
It is, definitely.
I don't really know where to go from here. But
No, but like I keep that thought in mind because I can relate to that. It has happened to me as well. You have like super low expectations on yourself and whatever you have created, and when you show it to someone, they're like, "Oh wow, this is a masterpiece!" Like, "Wow, that's so good." And why are we so harsh to ourselves? Like we criticize ourselves all the time and we judge ourselves all the time. Like, what is the real reason to why we don't see the good thing
in what
in
you've
what
done.
you did. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think because I feel like you're trying to match you try to match your performance with a certain expectation. Obviously, for example, with music, it's easy because you hear professional music all the time, everywhere. Imagine if we would be listening to like like rookies playing music all the time, where you realize like, wow, like and if that's the only thing you hear, you start liking that, and you kind of start finding nice things about it. Until when you hear better stuff, that's when your expectations get so much higher.
Yeah, that's true.
And we hear that all the time. And then our expectation for our own work then is really high. And when it doesn't match that exactly, it's so easy to get discouraged.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Where you don't give yourself the space to realize, hey, I just started, or I've done this for a year, maybe even 5 years. And I'm still not coming up to the standards that I'm like comparing everything to with what you hear all the time, for example. But at the same time, I feel like we need to give ourselves the space to realize, hey, I shouldn't expect incredible things from myself at this point. I should just focus on being interested in making something better or improving.
Yeah, improving.
Because you just enjoy doing that in itself, and an improvement would give you satisfaction. And I suppose at some point you start realizing that other people find enjoyment in what you do, and then you can find enjoyment in that thing. But definitely if you do things only for the validation and hoping others to accept you through what you do, it's a way to get validation, but it's not a very sustainable way to be creative. That's what I think.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I had a thought in my head, and you said something good, but I don't remember my thought about that.
Talking about mental blocks. That's what we
talking about mental blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The worst thing for creative stuff is distractions, which we've had this whole time we've been filming. Because one of the cameras keep going off, and
that's why the podcast is what it is.
Yeah. But this is a creative effort as well.
Yeah.
We might be looking at this footage later and realizing, oh my gosh, like our conversation was interesting in the moment, but when you put it on video and you hear yourself, it's like, oh, I'm not just going in circles with my thoughts. Like I'm not saying anything actually important.
No.
But I don't know. Now that there's three people speaking and we can communicate with each other, at least it sounds like it could have been good. PJ is like shaking his head.
No, I totally agree. You know,
Oh, I agree on the fact that it's going to be a crappy podcast.
well, we can call it that. Then you kind of have the expectations low, at least.
Yeah, that's the name of the podcast, the crappy podcast.
Actually, I had really high expectations for this podcast. I was telling everyone, I was telling my colleagues, and I was telling like my friends, like, yo, I'm gonna go to one of my good friends and record this podcast. They're like, oh, nice. What's it gonna be about? I'm like,
I don't know.
yeah. At first I was like, I don't know, but I was like, probably gonna be something like deep life stuff. They're like, wow. I was like, yeah, wow. And I was like imagining myself, after we finish the podcast, we'd be like, how do you say, like, configuring the video and the sounds and everything, making a good video, posting it on YouTube, and we're getting like many hits. And now I just came here. And the camera started clicking us. And we're talking, and we have to discuss like actually a good subject, but like we had to go back and forth and be creative. Yeah, it kind of backfired a bit, but
with the cameras, definitely. But that's the thing. I feel like when you imagine something in your head, when you're trying to do something and you try to visualize it, so much more often I've realized it's not going to be anything like what I've thought about it, and rarely it's going to be exactly what I think. So it's good to expect the unexpected, I suppose. I had this experience really quick. I had this experience where I did a stand-up comedy skit. I was given 3 minutes, and there were like 750 people. No, 750 people around there.
All right.
And I had come up with this sketch, and in my head, the performance was gonna be amazingly good. Like I was so excited, and I wasn't even nervous of going in front of the people.
Oh.
And I totally bombed it. It was horrible. It was ridiculously bad, and I even realized it while I was doing the performance. I asked someone to take a video of it, and it took me about a week to watch the video because I was so ashamed of how badly it went. And it was totally not what I had imagined.
Oh.
And sometimes being creative is taking risks too, and then making those mistakes and then going back, like experiencing the shame of. By the way, it took me like a day for the shame to hit me. For a day, I was like, I was actually pretty proud. Like I was just like in denial, I suppose. And then after a day, it's like, bam, it just came, and I was like, what have I done? But but it's interesting. Sometimes it goes the opposite, where you just kind of imagine something, and then it turns out to be way better than you thought. Even though it initially looks worse. I've had times when I've painted something, and I'm like, this is going to be horrible, and it ended up being actually really good.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, expectations is the mother of all screw-ups. So,
Mother of all unhappiness.
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's the dangerous thing about, like, first of all, you have to like see the signs. Not being nervous is one of the signs that, okay, things are gonna go bad.
You could be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to at least be, a little nervous and feel like some sort of like, I don't know, feel like you might, make a mistake.
Yeah.
Because if you're that confident, I've been that confident before, and I remember it doesn't turn out good, and it's just so funny because, like the whole process and the whole, like, all the stages you go through, like first you're really happy and you're good about it, and then suddenly you're in denial, and then you realize, you're in the shame stage, and then like what happens after that is either you stop doing what you did, or you just have a mental reset and just accept that it wasn't on the level you expected it to be, and just improve. Yeah.
That's quite funny. I started thinking that's quite like the anti-grieving process when you go from denial into happiness. That's the opposite around. If you think about that. I think there's might be something into it if you look into a little bit closer. But something that comes to my mind, like while thinking and discussing this, is that when you make something from creativity into creation, something I would add on to both of that is when you have that initial idea, you're feeling super excited and you do stuff in the spur of the moment. But one way to really think that if it's a really good idea is that you work on it a little bit and then you put it aside for a while. And if you still feel after when the kind of like the ashes has settled in or the smoke has settled, when you see that if you still have those feelings or even more passion for it, then you might even know that there might be something in it. I've had similar experiences where we had some crazy ideas. We had a crazy project for ourselves, me and my friend, and we just knew that it's going to. We started creating our sauna van. I have to bring that into discussion. We had this idea where we wanted to turn a van into a sauna, and just like crazy Finnish people do. And when we had that idea, it just felt really ridiculous. It's gonna take money. You could use that for so much something else. It's gonna take a lot of your time, and is it going to even work? There's going to be so many problems when you're going to do that. But at the same time, when my friend was talking about it, let's turn a van into a sauna. We were able to see the end outcome, and we knew that it's going to be a huge hit among our friends, among other things. And we were able to see that if we're going to do this, it's going to be the talking point of the year. And that's what actually happened. And I think there was a lot of when I think about that, it's really similar to creative processes as well, that you need to work on that. And we did get a lot of some people, not everyone had the same vision that we did, but when we actually hold on to that vision, something really great came out of it. And I think I could see in that process as well that when we just every week, and then when we started building it, we just got more, I guess, that validation for ourselves as well, that this is actually going to work. And we actually started to see that this is actually we thought first that it's going to be really crappy as well, but it ended up becoming better and better. And when we saw that, we kind of got more enthusiastic about it as well. And then we kind of started to make a little tweaks to make it even better, and it turned out pretty great. So I think that there's a lot into I guess, for the creative process as well.
I think there's different kinds of creative processes where you have that where you get more and more excited all the time and you just keep working on it. But then there's that where you start excited and then you realize how hard it is to make something, and you get really either bored or discouraged, but you still kind of try to push it through, and it can still end up being really good in the end. For example, like the animation that I was mentioning about, actually it's funny, the sauna van was incredible. Like, it was actually really, really good and functional. And we participated in this social event for young adults. They were like, how many people were there?
600.
600 people. So he brought the sauna van, and this animation that I was talking about, I did it for that event.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was both. We had like a big win with our creative things, but it's interesting because with the animation, like my process was like I was really excited about it first, and then between, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, it took so much time and effort, and I was like, this is not going to be even that good. Yet the end result was seemingly very, very good. People enjoyed it. But it was a different experience than from the sauna van, where you seemed to be excited. And I was also filming a video for these guys to make a funny video out of them to market the sauna van. But the process seemed to be fun. The end result was great, not just great, just phenomenal. It was really good. Yeah, so interesting how the process can be very different.
Where's that sauna van?
Still in Finland, yeah.
Still in Finland, we haven't been able to sell it forward.
Well, like a van, what do you mean with van? Do you mean just like
To the back of the van.
the back of a van?
Yeah.
So like a transit you have the front space, and there's that cardboard carrier place. And we turned that into I'll show you a few pictures.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
or the
it's-
video. Yeah,
yeah.
but it's
Alright.
but it's so funny because you think about it's probably not going to be as good quality as sauna in a van, but no, it's like a proper legit sauna.
But in those processes as well, we need to remember that we had butterflies in our stomachs. Is it going to work? You always had that nagging sensation in your back of your head, and I think that goes into every creative processes that you have that sensation because you're your worst judge. You know yourself better than anyone else. You know your inadequacies, what other people can't see, and I think when you need to I think all of us, we need to give some slack for ourselves as well. We need to give us a little bit of credit, that we are able to even do these things. I think one thing that I start to think, my minds go straight into when we're talking about mental blocks or creative blocks. It just, to me, I started thinking about, what really, where do they come from? And I think many people, when they want to be creative, I think they just think that creativity is just something that comes, a lightning strike of an idea comes to your head, and then you just run away with it. But I think that's, I guess, when we think about where it actually comes from, if you have had any creative sessions for yourselves, I don't think that's the way it actually comes from. I don't know, what are your ideas for that?
I think it partly does occasionally. Like I've definitely had epiphanies where I'm like, whoa. I know what to do, and it's like a stream is opened where all these ideas suddenly flow in, and I'm like whatever problems that I faced in with the creative thing, I can just easily figure it out. But it's not very common, and it comes in moments. But a lot of the times I feel like it's a matter of iteration, where you just make a lot of different ideas, see what works, and I think creativity requires also working with other people, like going back and forth with ideas and stuff. But yeah, it does take work. I feel like a lot of the work that you need to do is just to sit there and think and like try and take a break. I feel like breaks are great. Just doing something else to let your mind work on things in the background. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I totally forgot. Wow, I got a real mental block right here. Or no, my brain just blocked out everything we were talking about, and suddenly I thought of that guitar over there.
Yeah.
That's a real, not evidence, but like that's a real interesting functioning brain we got right there. We were talking about something. I was like, yeah, I totally agree, and then I was like, LTD. That guitar. I was like, I don't know why it's so easy to lose focus.
But there's that's what you were saying.
But can you just repeat what we were
You
talking
were
about?
just talking about the guitar.
Yeah,
This is
but-
a real guitar.
Before obviously.
Yeah, I'm having a mental block
Yeah.
now as well. Wow, all these mental blocks.
Wow.
But the different kinds of creative processes where sometimes it's easy. Oh, did we talk about that? It's so funny, like like such a short-term memory.
I mean,
So
it just
easily
snapped.
distracted. Yeah.
Just
What were we talking about?
Creative blocks, where did they come from?
Creative blocks.
How to tackle them.
Well, I think we should probably just, end this episode to a mental block. How easy it is to, like, with the distraction, to forget what you were talking about, where you were going, and it's real, people. Like it's
it's real.
it's real. It's totally real. But I think also being distracted sometimes isn't very bad because that can also boost one's creativity to a degree. But to have consistency, you have to cut down distraction.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And cut down the bad habits in your life. All the distractions and bad habits. Only keep the good habits. Obviously, it's hard to do so, but
And the unnecessary negative self-talk.
all right.
Yeah. Good discussion.
Good discussion.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Any last words?
Good stuff. No, I would say that just, be yourself, ignore the naysayers. Go be creative, You never know what hits the gold, so to speak.
Yeah. It'll either be an epic sauna van or a horrible stand-up comedy show.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.